Well, I feel I've got to give a lot of respect to James Wan for putting out a pair of films that changed the face of modern horror with Insidious and The Conjuring. It also influenced some very lackluster spin-offs and sequels, as well as copycats, rip-offs, and imitations. While the formula of these films used to be jump scares, piano bangs, and false starts, I also want to recognize that Blumhouse has taken the criticism into consideration and removed those cliches, replacing them with genuinely scary moments that sprout from the story and truly affect the character. Still, for every truly chilling Annabelle creation, there's the plopping mess of The Nun. Let's find out which the third Conjuring movie turned out to be. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Through our tedious lives, we press many important buttons, but if you could do me a favor and hit that like button down below, share this video with all your social media addicted pals, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. I'd be in your eternal debt. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, is new in theaters and streaming on HBO MAX right now. It's directed by Michael Chaves and written by David Leslie Johnson-McGoldrick. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It opens mid-exorcism as Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, read Bible verses and exorcism passages to a young boy named David Glatzel, who seems to be possessed. Glatzel is played by the go-to spectacle-wearing kid these days, Julian Hilliard. Soon the exorcist arrives in a very cliched way, paying homage to the Exorcist poster and immediately finding himself unconscious on the floor. And when all hell breaks loose, family friend Arnie, played by Ruari O'Connor, compels the demon to enter him and leave the boy alone. When the dust clears, Ed is sent to the hospital suffering a heart attack, and the Glatzel family attempts to resume a normal life. But the case is far from over as Arnie attacks a co-worker and kills him, and claims innocence once he is found by the police, testifying that he was possessed by a demon at the time. The Warrens find themselves in the middle of another missing persons case involving similar conditions, uncovering a cult attempting to bargain with demonic forces and souls, and some ghostly monsters along the way. Now, The Conjuring has been the center of a lot of controversy, as many feel the Warrens are nothing but charlatans taking advantage of grieving and traumatized people and filling their heads with supernatural jargon. I honestly don't know much about that. I don't know what they did. I really don't care. The films say based on true events, but since before Fargo and JFK used that tagline, I've realized that any film claiming to be factual are seen through a specific biased lens and are never the ultimate truth behind the story. All I really care about is if this movie is entertaining or not, and for the most part, I felt both The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 were just that. The Devil Made Me Do It is kind of a move in a different direction in terms of structure and style, as the Warrens are placed firmly in the center of the story, and the family affected by the supernatural are shuffled off to the side. The balance was there in the original, and this balance between the story being both about the Warrens and the haunted family of the month was again achieved for the most part in Part 2. But this third installment is mostly an Ed and Lorraine Warren story, and I think that's where The Devil Made Me Do It kind of falters. Sure, we get the obligatory scenes of Arnie and his girlfriend Debbie, played by Sarah Catherine Hook, pining over each other through prison bars. Occasionally, little David is there to provide some cryptic words about his experience with being possessed. And as the Warrens get closer to the root of the problem, we flash back to Arnie in prison squirming in his prison cell. But that's not what the movie really wants to focus on. This is all about Ed and Lorraine, and that lack of compelling characters suffering, which was abundant in the first two, really takes away the investment I had in Part 3. We felt the anguish of the Perron family as they went through their haunting in the first movie, as well as the Hogsden family in the second. But we don't experience anything other than the exorcism in the early moments to give us anything to emotionally latch onto with this new Glatzel family. Sure, starting with the action is great, but somewhere along the line you have to backtrack and let the viewer care for these people in peril. Because that's never done, The motivation for the Warrens feels rather flimsy due to the lack of depth we're given as to what they're fighting for. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, has the obligatory moments in the dark where something bursts out at you or something creepy occurs, leading to something even creepier. In the original two, these moments are depicted much like the original Poltergeist, through the eyes of a child, which immediately gives the viewer a perspective from which to form investment. We all remember being kids, alone at night, looking into that shadowy closet and imagining you saw something move in there. There are a few of these moments in The Devil Made Me Do It, but they're experienced by Ed and Lorraine, not any of the kids. And honestly, with the amount of bric-a-brac in their little haunted museum, one would think they would have been able to build some sort of tolerance for that sort of thing. Sure, we get the waterbed scene, told in flashback, that is highlighted in the commercials, but nothing else really. And that scene comes and goes so fast that I doubt there's going to be a waterbed monster movie spinning off from this. Seeing Ed and Lorraine in peril isn't what reels you in. It's when there's a threat to the family that does that. And this film never gives us any opportunity to build any of that investment. Ed and Lorraine aren't the Ghostbusters. They aren't brimming with personality. Lorraine is overly serious, constantly saying cryptic things, and occasionally something sly to her knowing husband, Ed, who is constantly in awe of her power. In all honesty, they're a rather boring couple. At Ed's bedside after his heart attack, Lorraine reflects on the first time they meet. This flashback is about as dull as they come. I didn't really want to see them take on a ghost together and then fall madly in love, but the story we got about them meeting at the movies and then running in the rain to a gazebo really lacks any kind of conflict, power, or punch. And that's kind of how I felt about this whole movie. We know Ed and Lorraine are going to make it out alive, but what I didn't know was about the court case and how demonic possession is proven in a court of law. Had that film focused on the lawyer, who might have been a non-believer, who is then convinced that the supernatural exists, I think it might have been more interesting. Sure, they've already made that movie before with The Possession of Emily Rose. At least that would have made for a compelling story. Here there isn't any of that conflict. It's a series of vignettes where the sheriff is a non-believer and then he's convinced in the next 5 minutes after he witnesses the Warrens do their thing. There's a moment where Ed tells the lawyer he wants to introduce her to Annabelle in order to convince her that the supernatural is real, but that moment is never shown, and the next minute we're in a court fighting for Arnie's life. The only part of the court hearing we see is Arnie standing and looking back at Ed, Lorraine, and Debbie, and then we're given some text explaining his sentence to the audience. While the conflict directly involved the families in the original and its sequel, this third installment forgets about who this film is all about in the first place and then tries to make it up with a text box at the end. As with most films that end with a "what happened next" text, I felt it was all kind of lazy and lame. Sure, I felt like I watched something for almost 2 hours, but as far as something that will impact me enough to remember what it was in the bathroom after the film ends, this movie didn't really provide it. It's not that anyone did a particularly bad job. Rory O'Connor is kind of bland, but he did his work as the pale, obsessed Arnie. He just didn't have much to do other than in those first moments for self-sacrifice. Vera Farmiga is fine as Lorraine, but despite the ghosts, demons, and cultists threatening her, she really doesn't have anything to do here in terms of developing her character. Even Patrick Wilson, whom one would think would have some kind of profound experience, having almost died, isn't given anything insightful to do but forget his heart medication on the counter. Wouldn't one think that a trip to the other side on an operating table would be something big for occultists such as the Warrens? Characters like the Exorcist are only there to be knocked down so that the Warrens could be propped up as the heroes. There are all these places where interesting directions and character could be put in there, but instead we get the same old schmaltzy goo-goo eyes shared between Ed and Lorraine and a movie hyping up their love for one another. Ed could be laid up for part of the film instead of standing behind Lorraine with his mouth open in wonder. This might have made for some interesting developments for Lorraine, who doesn't have her anchor beside her on the case. Meanwhile, Ed could have had a metaphysical battle in the coma involving the case as well, and only coming together with Lorraine in the end to prove that they are much better together than alone. Put some damn conflict in this movie. Put some damn conflict in their relationship. But none of that occurs here. It's just missed opportunities galore. The Conjuring series has always had difficulty telling an expansive story involving the two main heroes going through their own issues and then the story of the family they're trying to help on top of all of that. This balance was achieved in previous entries, still giving Ed and Lorraine enough time to be depicted as the heroes. But while there's a fun scene in a morgue where a chubby cadaver starts charging at the Warrens, The Devil Made Me Do It felt as if it missed its target. I can appreciate it not wanting to repeat beats played out in The Possession of Emily Rose and wanting to deviate from the Conjuring formula, but this won't be one of the installments of this franchise that I'll be rushing back to anytime soon. What did you guys think of The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and of the Conjuring franchise as a whole? Let me know down in the comments. That'll be it for today. Please chime in down below in the comments and let me know how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. So guys, you know how YouTube works. I'd love to be able to dedicate more time to this channel. I'm not monetized yet, so if you want to help me out, remember to hit all the pertinent bells and whistles down below. Want some spooky comics to read? I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look out for. Both Gravetrancers and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, can be found in only the finest of comic book shops. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on my website, mlmillerwrites.com. If you really want to show your support, I also have a Patreon page at mlmiller. Look for the link to my Patreon page down below. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're